In 2010, facing a large revenue deficit, the MTA cut service throughout the system, eliminating some subway and bus lines and increasing headways for everyone throughout the entire system. Many of the subway service cuts are long forgotten, with them taking place over 10 years ago, but I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at these service cuts and analyze their impacts on the system. Should some of the cut services be reinstated? With the New York City subway, 3 lines in their entirety were eliminated, with one seeing its route shortened. Starting with the V, it ran between 71st Avenue and Continental Avenue in the Forest Hills neighborhood of Queens to 2nd Avenue on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The line was replaced by an extension of the M service. I've seen proposals for, instead of creating the orange M, to keep the V service and run it to Church Avenue on the Culver line, allowing for the F train to run proper Culver Express service. I don't think this is a good plan, as the current M service sees a lot of ridership. The M does have a few issues though, like the reduction in train length, with trains having 8 cars instead of the 10 that the V used to run, and it also causes more interlining, with the M merging with the J at Essex Street. The M does win over the V when it comes down to rider convenience though. There are a lot of people who use the M to get between the Myrtle Avenue line and the 6th Avenue line. The M gives riders a valuable 1-seat ride from Brooklyn to Manhattan, unlike the V which terminated in Manhattan. The orange M, I feel like, is a much better service than the brown M, as I hear that the brown M basically carried air south of Broad Street, and it eliminated the transfer between the Essex Street station on the Nassau Street line and the Delancey Street station on the 6th Avenue line. Next up, we have the brown M train. The brown M ran between Metropolitan Avenue in Queens and Broad Street in Manhattan, and during rush hours the line was extended from Broad Street back into Brooklyn via the Montague Tubes, 4th Avenue, and West End to Bay Parkway. As I mentioned in the last segment about the V train, I feel like the orange M is a much better service than the brown M. Yeah, the brown M provided extra service on 4th Avenue Local and West End, it also barely saw any ridership in that section. People want a direct ride into Midtown, not into the financial district and right back into Brooklyn. For extra 4th Avenue service, I feel like the W can have more trains that run into Brooklyn, either adding onto its current service pattern of running to 86th Street on Sea Beach or running via West End to Bay Parkway, possibly allowing for D Express service on West End. Now, the W train. The W train, well, it ran and still runs between Astoria Ditmars Boulevard in Queens and Whitehall Street in Manhattan. The line was returned to service back in 2016 to provide extra service to the Astoria line in Queens, since the queue was being rerouted to 96th Street on the 2nd Avenue line. Now, in most B Division D interlining plans, the W is one of the first lines to be removed. Personally, I'm not too much of a big fan of the line, but I will say that it is a huge help when I need to go to a local station on Broadway and the R is being a bit of a, bad line. And finally, the G train. The G service obviously wasn't eliminated in 2010, however it was cut back from 71st Avenue and Continental Avenue in Queens to Court Square, also in Queens. When it ran to Continental, it only ran there during weekends and late nights, and to be honest, I don't mind that being a service pattern that were to return. With Queens Boulevard only having one local service during the overnight hours and Queens Boulevard being one of the more important subway lines, it would make sense to add more service to it, even during late nights. I don't know, maybe I just want to see the G return to Queens Boulevard. Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments below. Now, with these budget cuts, some subway lines weren't only cut, but also saw reduced service and increased headways. This resulted in frustration from riders, and over the years, the headways throughout the system have improved, with riders waiting less time for trains than they were in the beginning of the 2010s. Nothing will ever compare to the service levels we were seeing back in the mid-1900s though. Now, the subway wasn't the only New York City transit property which saw eliminations and service reductions. Some bus lines were also eliminated, with hundreds of MTA employees being laid off. Overall, these budget cuts were made to close a budget gap of nearly $800 million. Unfortunately, we might see service cuts similar to these in the future, with the MTA again facing an absurd deficit of $2.5 billion by 2025. The MTA has expressed how much they want to avoid cutting service throughout the system, so hopefully the MTA can figure out some solutions to the budget issues soon, so we can avoid those cuts. What are your thoughts on the 2010 MTA service cuts? I feel like they partially shaped the system in a good way. Of course, not regarding the increased headways, but regarding some of the changes in service patterns. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and consider supporting me via channel memberships or super thanks. Special thanks to the Bronx Express Gaming for joining the channel at the train operator tier, and Stuart Guberman and Daniel Green for joining the channel at the 2 Broadway tier.